So it's one of the bird species that I can normally see around here on the bank. So these crabs over here, they will be collecting leaves that will be falling from the trees. So today we're going to be going on an adventure kayaking through the estuary. So we're going to go and explore the estuaries and specifically to the banks where we can find some organisms there and then get to see how exciting they are. So it's quite incredible when you look at the estuarine environment. It's such a unique ecosystem. So when we're talking about unique ecosystem, also the organisms that you can find in the estuary also needs to be able to adapt to the different conditions that come through with the estuary. For an example, we do have the tide coming through, so they need to be able to deal with the water level changes. They also need to be dealing with the salinity within the water, as is a mixture of both fresh water and salt water. So they need to have some adaptive skills so that they can be able to adapt to the situation. So for today, we're gonna also go onto the bank and try and find some interesting organisms there. So we've got a few different species of crabs that we can find on the banks. So through paddling like this, I also see some few birds. So right now from a distance, I see what we call the blacksmith lapwing. So it's one of the bird species that I can normally see around here on the bank. So they're called the blacksmith lapwing because they make a sound that sounds like somebody hitting on a metal. So just like the blacksmith. So that's why they're called the blacksmith lapwings. So I got an area around here where I can see some few activities of the crabs. So I'm gonna go and bank my kayak right over there and try and see if I can observe them. There we go. So I see a couple of holes and I can see some activities right over here. So let's try and see if I can just spot and just sit still and try and camouflage myself. So I'm going to camouflage myself right over here. Just wait for the crabs to come out and then we'll be able to see some of their activities when they finally come out. So this is when the little army crabs are feeding. So they normally pick up the soil, pick up the mud, and then just move it around their mouth, and then they get to create this little tiny bowls. And by that, it's almost like similar to filter feeding, but that's how they normally do it. So you normally see it just doing it around the mud, and they get to create these little tiny bowls. So right over here, we've got these holes here on the bank. So this belongs to the red claw mangrove crabs. So you can see it was just busy maintaining its hole. So it removed most of the mud that came in during the high tide and just to clean it up and just to maintain it. So these crabs over here, while they're out here, especially during low tide, what they normally will be doing, they will be collecting leaves of the trees that fall, leaves that will be falling from the trees. So what they will do with those leaves, they do feed on the leaves. So they almost like clean up the bank. So if you were wondering why most of the time when you find on the bank where there's trees and there's not a lot of leaves, is because of these crabs. So they will collect the leaves and then they will store them in the hole and then for later utilization. So crabs forms the part of the cleaning crew. So they are the ones that normally clean the banks. And you can see right over here we've got another one with a hole that is closed, and then they also use the very same mud, which they use the very same mud to close the hole. Crabs of this size can easily fall prey to most of the big predators in the water, especially fish, especially when it's high tide. So what they will normally try and do, they'll be active out here when it's low tide, and then when it's high tide, They will close up their holes and then hide inside and then wait for low tide and then start all again. And some of the organisms that you can find here, right over here on the bank, you can also find things like mud prawns and sand prawns. So for those who enjoy fishing, you'll find that you bring a prawn pump, you get to pump for prawns and then get to use that as fish bait. So down here we do have the Cape clawless otters. We also have the water mongoose. So those are some of the two organisms that you can normally find close to the water areas, either the dams or the river. I've seen a couple of Cape clawless otters, but this one that was climbing right over here, you can see has got claws. So you can see there's some claw markings over here. And you can see that's almost like a highway where it normally goes up and down. Alrighty, I'm gonna head back into my kayak and then continue my journey. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned and join us next time when we go and explore the African bush.